What's going on, architects? So I've just spent I spent the last hour and 50-ish minutes talking to the wonderful, amazing Ollie McCarthy, aka Coach Ollie, aka running coach specialist, and various other things. We wanted to basically explore together how to run healthier, happier, and stronger. What advice, what words of wisdom could we pass on to you guys to help you keep putting one foot in front of the other and doing that thing that you love or hate to love, as it were. We spoke about everything from injury through to breathing, through to strength and conditioning, addressing mindset, and we answered loads of questions that you guys had sent to us leading up to the episode. If you want to get to your question, head to about the last half an hour or so. You should see your question pop up and you are good to go. Two things I need to apologize for. One, my sound wasn't great. Apparently I'm still figuring out how to use all this fancy equipment, all the gear, and no idea. So apologies about that. Secondly, my internet connection ran out halfway through. We're an hour and a half in, so there's a bit of a dodgy edge before you get to the final 25 minutes where I've just had to stitch together two recordings. So apologies about that as well. We will get better over time. Next week, I'll be dropping the next episode going live at 12:30 next Friday, where I'll be speaking to the amazing Charles Oxley, and we'll be talking about how to stay motivated and consistent in training, something that I know is very, very important to you guys. So hope you enjoy the episode. Ollie is a great human being. If you have any questions, feel free to DM us directly, or send me an email at chevy@chasingprojects.com, and I'll always be here to help you guys as best as I can. Enjoy. So I'm super excited today, guys. The reason being is we are going to talk about how to run healthier, happier, and stronger with the wonderful, the amazing Coach Ollie. Pow. Now, pictured and pictured, Ollie. How are you, my man?
I'm all good, mate. How are you?
I'm kind of excited. It's good to be here. Shout out to everyone. Right, we've got people watching, Ollie. Now I'm nervous. I would prefer people like when we're in our own conversation. Dude, yeah, I'm all good, man. I'm all good. All good. You know, Friday. I've took a few days off this week. Get the energy levels back on track. Still some work to go.
Nice.
But feeling good. But anyway, enough about me. Dude, it's good to see your face.
Likewise.
Super excited to have you here today. So just to give everyone a bit of context, obviously back in the day I used I started off my coaching journey was with running, and for me the magical art of putting one foot in front of the other is kind of what led me here today. And a big focus within that was always not only helping runners look at the quality of the miles, look at their strength and conditioning, looking at their running technique, but it was really helping them understand what else they needed to be doing in the day. What were they doing in the 23 hours in the day, not just in the hour that they were running. And what I learned very quickly was that it was the stuff that was happening in the 23 hours of the day that was having the biggest effect on how they ran, you know, and on their health, on their happiness, on their strength, and the things that we want to talk about today. So that was kind of where I first started out looking at everything but the running. And during that journey as a run coach, I got made an ambassador for Calm, the mental health charity. And when I got made ambassador, part of my job was to hold workshops for Calm's runners, the Calm's community. So guys that were raising money for Calm, that were running kind of like London Marathon, Brighton Marathon, Hackney Half, British 10K, and so forth. And part of doing that was workshops. And I did one of the workshops one day, and this big smiley chap walked in to attend one of the workshops. And I think I was doing the workshop with Charles. Is that right, Ollie?
Yeah.
It was, wasn't it? And what race were we preparing you for?
That was Brighton Marathon. To say 2018,
right?
17 or 18.
Yeah.
I think it was 17. Yeah.
So it was, sorry, no, go on, buddy. Yeah. And that was the marathon, right?
Yeah, it was, So Brighton Marathon, I think it's 2018 actually. Yeah.
It was great. No, dude, and I just want to, just give everyone a bit of context why I love talking to you. I remember you coming in, and there's this real thing, like, no matter, like we talk about this a lot, and I know we talk behind the scenes, and we've spoken to Bethan about it, and we talk about this. We talk about this kind of imposter syndrome, right? Like, and I think still, no matter how proven I was, whatever that means as a coach, especially within the running sphere, because I think when I met you, I'd just come off the BBC documentary, kind of there or thereabouts. So I'd kind of like earned my place at the table, but still, like, my insecurities about, like, do I actually know what I'm doing, always consistently runs deep. And I remember you walking in, didn't know anything about you, and this guy's like, he's a coach. And as soon as you're a coach coaching a coach, you know this, right?
Yeah, of
Right?
course.
As soon as you're a coach, like coaching a coach, your imposter syndrome starts to come like shining through. And I'm sure anyone watching this understands, right? As soon as you're speaking to another manager at your level or a colleague at your level, as soon as you expose your principles and your methodologies, it's like, what if they see through me? what if I don't? So, like, I remember you walking in, and that was the first thing. Wasn't, you know, I remember you really good energy, but the first thing was my own insecurities, right? Like my own ego standing in the way. And I remember that, and I remember doing that session with you, and like my focus was on proving to you that I knew what I was talking about. How stupid's that, right? Like, this is great. I'm allowed to talk. Me and Ollie, we had, like, so it's just really honest conversations. I remember that, like, that was what it was. That's what that session was about. And then we started to speak throughout the session.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like what shone through from me with you was this real learner's mindset. You know, you were like of the same ilk as me and Charles and so forth. Like, we just love learning from other coaches. Like, that's what we're about. It's not that we think, and that was a sudden reminder to me, like, why I'm here. Like, it was like, it's okay, Chev, like, you are who you are, but let's hear what Ollie, and I know that you were, you know, strength and conditioning based, and you had so many questions around the breathing stuff, and you were so interested and so engaging. And it was that energy that first then drew me towards you. And then, you know, to cut a long story short, I think you then attended a couple more bits and pieces with Calm, right?
Yeah, because we did that first workshop, and see, I met you and Charles, and you know when you come away at the end of a workshop and you're kind of like, oh, I just need to go and sit in a dark room because my mind is just going everywhere. Like, in a good way, just because being exposed to breath work for the first time and actually kind of having that experience in both the running and also the kind of down regulatory piece at the end, I was like, oh, this really, you know, I really felt an effect off of it. And then, yeah, we kind of, I think I said something about further on down the line, I'd put something on Instagram about actually trying nasal breathing and actually kind of the first beginning to understand it. And then there was another workshop which we did further on down when I was training for, I think it was an ultra marathon.
Yeah.
And yeah, we chatted then as well, because it was quite a small group with that one.
Yeah.
And I think that was kind of time, basically, because I've been bugging Calm and just been like, how else can I get involved? And I think that was the time where you were doing stuff with ASICs and potentially looking at, you know, doing less with Calm. And I've been bugging them for ages about doing more with Calm. So it was kind of like a good transition.
Well, dude, it was perfect, and that's when my piss poor introduction is exactly this, really leading to this point, which was, you know, it was getting to, by that stage we only knew you on a very superficial level, but, you know, it was very clear that you had a learner's mindset. You know, it was like, hey, I'm here to learn, I want to understand as much as possible, and it was that energy that, you know, like I said, myself and Charles and the other guys that we work with, that's what we're kind of always looking for, right? And it was also, what can we learn from you, which is always the wonderful thing. There's never assumption. Just because we're standing there in the coach and taking the session, it doesn't mean that we don't have the ability to learn something from other people in that room, whether they're coaches or just human beings, right? Because we've all got life experience. And it was that, and that was it, and that's why it's been such a pleasure. It's so great. I mean, we've had other conversations that we've had on podcasts and we've recorded, but it's just, again, always so lovely to be sitting here talking to you about one of our favorite subjects, because it's been a real pleasure watching your journey from where you were to where you are. And it was kind of, when I first met you, it was exploring your running, how to run healthier, how to run wiser, how to be more connected to your movement. You were aware of this narrative. and then we gave you a few principles, we gave you a few tools, we gave you a kind of a different approach, and you just instantly soaked that up, and you kept coming back for more, for lack of a better phrase, or you wanted more. And that was the genius thing about it. And then I kind of ended up getting the job with ASICS, and I know that you were bugging Calm, and I said to Calm, like, I just don't think I can commit to these sessions anymore because I don't know if I'm going to be in Tokyo next week or not. So I don't know if I don't want to, bail out on the thing. And they were like, well, what about Ollie? And it was like, as soon as they said Ollie, I was like, hell yeah. Get Ollie. And then you've taken over as a run coach for Calm. And then also now over the last, I know, several months, which we've talked about consistently, you've now really started to build a specialism within working with runners. Is that right?
Yeah.
Give me a little bit more context about that, bro. So what is it, kind of, why did you decide to then truly specialize with working with runners, and what is it that you do with runners now?
Well, I think, like, because I've, been on this kind of journey, so to speak, from just running my first marathon to then running kind of longer distances, and kind of, I feel that running has given me so much physically, mentally, and I know its kind of power of, how it can give you a better connection with yourself. And I suppose that kind of, I've seen how much it can do for me, and I see how much power there is in running in communities, with the stuff we do with Calm, also with Ben Dave's group as well, with the Early Bird Run crew, because I kind of work with them a little bit as well. And I just see the power of it and how much positivity there can come from running. And then I was kind of getting to a point where I was working with more and more runners, and it was enjoying it more. So then I just decided to just basically go all in. It's quite easy for like a personal trainer and coach to just kind of flutter around several different things. But I really enjoy working with runners. I really enjoy running. So it kind of made sense just to go down that path. And then the second part is that just the high prevalence of injury rates in runners. And coming from like more of a strength background, I found that generally speaking, I've always been pretty, I've always been able to kind of minimize injuries, and adapt and overcome kind of any little niggles that I've had, which I predominantly put down to the kind of strength, mobility stuff and that background anyway. So my kind of focus with runners is basically getting them stronger, and keeping them injury free, which is kind of what I want to do. Because if we can get them stronger, then generally we can keep them more injury free, which then in turn means that they're able to access running, regularly, and able to get that good feeling, a good hit off of it. And then a bit further to that, once we're kind of nailing those areas, we can begin looking at things like breath, begin looking at things like technique and different styles of running to maximize what they get out of each run. Because I think that the typical running thing is you just go and do more. Whereas I actually would prefer people to kind of do less running, but just to make sure that when they run, they're getting the most out of those runs. And I suppose it links into what you say, is kind of beginning to look at the bigger picture around running as well. So kind of like the mental side, nutritional side, and the life side of things as well.
The running life. Dude, there's a load of things we want to talk about there. And I definitely want to loop back on you starting to teach breath work. Because my second biggest memory of you was the first time that you. So it was wasn't it the first time that you did you took the Calm session, right? Yeah. And it was, I ended up rocking up because I wasn't going to be around, and I was like, I'm going to go lend support. And I was in two minds, because I was like, one, just don't go, because it's Ollie's thing. I don't want him to feel any pressure from me being there and attending and stuff like that. But also at the same time, is they can be quite intimate groups. So it was kind of like I wanted to lend support. So I was kind of like, but I was like, right, go and just make sure you sit back in the background and jump in where possible, lend support, like be there. And I remember that you were teaching breath work, right, in running for the first time. Because it's really interesting to look at this from a coach's perspective, right? Because I know a couple of the questions that we've got today. So obviously the output of today is how can we help people run healthier, happier, and stronger? And then also we've got some questions towards the end that some of the audience have asked throughout the week. But it's interesting, a couple of those questions are obviously related to breath. I know that you're talking about it a lot on your channel at the moment, but how is it from a coaching perspective, teaching breath for the first time or entering in? What were the challenges that you found as a coach trying to educate breath in a group setting or one-on-one, but probably within a group setting that first time?
I mean, so some of the challenges are, I had a good idea of what breath work was in my head, but actually being able to cue people, being able to get them to understand what I was saying and be able to put into words the power of breath work and cue it in a way that they understand was probably the most difficult thing, especially if I'd never done it before. I mean, I'm quite lucky in the fact that I've been coaching for a long time, so I have the skill set to be able to coach people, but sometimes when coaching new concepts, it can be a little bit difficult. So some of the stuff is, well, one, if people have never been introduced with breathwork before, then it can be quite an alien concept to get your mind around. And I think from watching you do it with me and from us visiting that a couple of times before, I mean, that obviously helped a huge amount because I saw what you'd done and basically copied bits of it. So,
bro, this is the thing. Like, originality is very hard to come up with an original and creative new idea. Like, it is. And I think if you look at even within the management sphere, I think a manager taught me once that the best managers just copy other managers, get good ideas and assimilate it into their work. And it's like, absolutely, like that's what we're there to learn from each other. And in essence, it has to start with a form of mimicry first of all, right?
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it was just being because as well, people were always quite skeptical with this stuff, and I know that because I was very skeptical about the whole breathwork thing, but I understood its power when I actually experienced it. So I knew that whatever I kind of said beforehand didn't matter too much until I'd got people to experience it, because once you've been through that experience, then you are inquisitive and want to learn a little bit more. So then knew that I could talk to people more about how breath could help, how they can use it when they're running, and how it can help them to run further, easier, calmer. So I wasn't too worried about what I was saying because I knew if I demonstrated it, that would be enough to kind of get their attention.
Well, it's the great. If you can just, I think that's the easy thing about breath work in some ways. If you can just trying to get people to feel what a good squat feels like versus a bad squat. I mean, I don't know, you know what I mean? Like versus another squat, like it's actually a very hard thing to do, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? Like coaching someone to understand all these different cues and how a good squat can feel takes time. And that is an art form within itself, you know? And I think the joyous thing about breath is with the right cue and the right questions at the right time, you can very, very quickly get people to feel a difference in their running. Simply, and I think to people, again, I want to make sure that we're giving people clear, tangible examples. So one of the exercises I probably did with you the first time, or I do within a room, is like, right, I want you to run around this room, with your mouth closed, nasal only breathing, and that's it. You just have to breathe through your nose, and people go off, they'll run around the track. And you can try this at home, right? If you're listening, go for a run around a park, or like a 400-meter loop or something like that, and just keep your mouth shut, and then come back now I'm going to tell you what it's going to be like. So it's going to be, but you know, come back and now this time go for a run again. And it was a case of, right, now match your movement to your breath, right? Like, don't match your breath to your movement. So slow down and make sure that you can breathe like calmly and nicely through the nose. And no matter what pace you run at, as long as you can breathe more, you know, efficiently through the nose, then that's the right pace for you. And then people go out and do that again, and they make those first couple of adaptations. You get them to step over the fear that they might be feeling or any anxiety that they might be feeling, and you put them at ease, and they come back again, and it's that second time. Right, how did that feel the second time? People will go, oh, it felt better.
Yeah.
How did it feel better? You know, and the first time people come back, they're like, oh, I felt like I was suffocating. I couldn't breathe. Like, it was hard. You know, I was all over the place. And then you give them the cues for the second they come back, and it's, how did it feel? Like, oh, I felt better. I felt more relaxed. I felt more in control. I felt more connected to my movement. I felt more present, you know, and generally 7 out of 10 people will come back and give you one of those responses. And I think that's what the great thing about breath is. You can have that instant feeling, and you can give people then a benchmark, right? Like a baseline. Okay, so this is how you breathe when you're out of control. This is how you breathe when you're in control. This is how one should feel. This is how the other feel. Job done.
Well, I think that's the thing, like referring back to that whole squat analogy, is that a squat, like it works so well with running because the breath thing is very like emotionally driven, right? So because you get those things of kind of panic and maybe anxiety sometimes when you are breathing heavily through your mouth, short, sharp breaths, you get that feeling of panic a little bit. Whereas when you have that feeling of calm when you're nasal breathing, that they're so different ends of the spectrum. Whereas you don't have any emotion when you're squatting. You do, but you don't have like, I feel calm because I'm sitting in a deep squat, or I feel good because I feel panicky because I'm in a kind of, you know, not like a perfect squat, if that makes sense. So I think that's why kind of cueing that stuff and actually being able to show people is so powerful.
And what do you think, in your experience of coaching people through breath, what do you think some of the initial, and we can get to this in our questions later on, and I think we're going to cover a lot of it now, but it is a lot of people are asking about this at the moment, so let's dig into it. What do you think some of the, in your experience, some of the initial challenges and hurdles that people have to get over when introducing a new breathing practice into their running regime?
So there's kind of two things that I think are key. One is you have to treat, although you're going to be running and although you're going to be kind of trying to breathe in a different way, you have to treat that run as a breath practice rather than a run practice. Yeah. Because initially you're going to have to slow down a huge amount to probably what you're used to in order to be able to, you know, work at nasal only, for example. And that's where a lot of people kind of trip up, is because they're going into it like they would normally, but just trying to throw in like nasal only breathing. And because you have to adapt to it, and because it takes a little bit of time, you almost have to have, okay, this is my nasal run. This is the one where that's going to be the skill that I'm working on. And then I'm just going to go and work on that. So the focus isn't time, the focus isn't distance, it's not on speed, it's just on nasal only mechanics or breathing mechanics.
And okay, so, and this is really interesting because I'm going to talk you through a real world example at the moment of how I'm coaching someone through this.
Yeah.
And some of the reminders that I've had to give myself as a coach. What are the challenges as a coach? So then you've got someone there, right? You understand that they've got to pick up this skill. They've got to learn a new skill. But this person wants to run faster, run further. They want to get into double-digit miles. Like, they want to get stronger, right? They want the outside noise, like pictures of success, right? Like, what are the challenges that you face as a coach trying to get people to focus on this one skill and developing that skill? What are the hurdles within that you have to overcome?
I mean, it's all about how you frame it, right? So if I tell someone they're running slowly and you're just going to focus on your breathing, then people might not necessarily buy into that. So it depends on the person. I might not even have that conversation with them about the breathing. But what I'm going to say is you're going to be, working on your aerobic capacity. So what we're going to do is we're going to slow you down. We're going to make sure that you just working at nasal breathing and you're just working for a period of time. So it's basically just reframing it.
Yeah.
Because, like you say, if someone is very keen to do that, then, or on the other side, it's a recovery run. And actually, the idea of this is just to get blood moving. It's not to, blood moving around the body, just to kind of get you working at a lower intensity for a longer period of time, or just to go out, and it's just to get them moving in that way, in a way that they're going to buy into. Because the danger is, and from a coaching perspective, is that they'll just go out and run that as they normally would, and just try and smash it. So I think that reframing how you're going to do that run is quite important.
And in your experience,
so
we're talking about skill acquisition here.
Yeah.
Cool. So I'm listening to this and I'm like, cool. So how long is that going to take me to acquire that skill?
Depends how long you practice it.
Correct answer, Coach Ollie. It's super, because I think you're right, and I think even myself, like I've had to. So obviously, I'm getting hands on with runners again at the moment, working with runners, and I've been working on and off for the last. I've never really stopped, but getting more into the nitty gritty with coaching runners again at the moment, and. It's funny because I work. I have one program of work where I work with someone for 30 days, and it's like I'll do an assessment, look where they're at, and I'm like, right, this is our target for the next 30 days. Now, as someone who is trying to coach someone and sell a product, my fear is that you're just like, you want to give everyone everything, right? Do you know what I mean? Like you're like, and it's like I've had to remind myself that it's one skill at a time. And like I say, it's like what, and I'm sitting there writing what the next 30 days looks like for this human being. And I'm like, right, I know that they want to work on technique, running technique. I know that we need to work on breathing. I know that we need to work on how they manage their energy throughout the day. I know they need to work on introducing a warm-up, a cool-down. And I'm like, suddenly it's like, hold on a sec. We've only got 30 days and there is this whole row of habits here, and it's like, actually, yes, I can introduce some basic protocols and systems around warm-ups and cool-downs. That's no problem at all. I can give some basic stuff around technique. But actually, I need to decide what we're coaching here. And it needs to be one thing. Am I coaching for breath, developing the skill of breath? Am I coaching for the development of technique? Am I coaching for the development of speed? Am I coaching for the development of strength? And it's like really having to kind of be very... And I'm saying this because people need to really understand this who are listening, which is it's so important that you really understand what your true goal is, or the true milestone is. And it's really important that you can't spread yourself too thin. And if you try and work on 2 or 3 things at once, they can actually counteract against each other. They can be opposing forces. For me, to try and get someone thinking about real running technique and starting to think about how they focus on their breath a month can actually be a big overload. It's just way too much. So it's like, right, let me pick one or the other. Let me develop a relationship with that skill. Let it become more of an autonomous habit. Because when it becomes an autonomous habit, you don't have to spend so much energy trying to create that habit and ingraining it in a habit, and then move on to the next thing. So I think it's just, super, super important to think about. Here's a question for you, and it's something I want to come back again, bro, because one of the big challenges that we know runners have is staying, and this is anyone, right? It doesn't have to be runners, but how do I stay consistent in training, and how do I stay injury-free? So consistent in training, we'll talk about another time, and I think that's another conversation to be had. Jump in next week when I'm got Charles Oxley on the show. Me and Charles Oxley. So tune in next week. We're going to be talking about how to stay motivated and consistent in training with the guru that is Charles Oxley. So we're going to be doing that. I'm interested in injury-free. Right? Because I've been talking about this a lot at the moment and thinking about my own narrative around injury freeness. Give me some more expansion on that. Is how do you go about trying to mitigate injury with your runners? What's your principles, your methodologies? What's your thoughts around that? What are the challenges within that? What are you thinking right now? Go.
I suppose in essence it is adding in more kind of support for your runs. So making sure that they're doing a warm up, making sure they're kind of doing an activation block before they step out the door, so that when they go out the door for their run, they're already kind of warm and ready to go. I'd rather have people spending kind of like 5-10 minutes doing that bit and less on their run, because I believe that will allow them to get more out of the time that they are running than if they were to try and just go straight out the door, no warm up, no mobility, no nothing, and then just try and run. Because in my experience and with people that I've coached, it normally takes like 10 minutes for them to get to a place where they actually feel good anyway. And then they can begin running, whereas I'd prefer we just do a little bit of work before, and then as soon as you're out the door, you can just go straight in and just begin running and feel good. So that's what I use for run days, and then basically making sure that there's an element of strength work in their program. And I suppose it all very much varies how much time they've got, how far they want to go. And then the other thing is just keeping an eye on overall volume of kilometers or miles run. Because the typical thing that happens is that people get a taste for running and then they just want to do more.
No, stop it. If you're listening to this, this is probably one of the most important things you can listen to in this conversation. Go on, Ollie, take him to church.
If you're not mindful of the overall amount of miles that you're running per week and how that's progressing, then if you do too much too soon, you've got a higher likelihood of getting injured. So I will make sure that I keep an eye on the volume of miles or kilometers. And then the last thing is just adding in things like a deload. So adding in weeks, whether that's every 4th week, 6th week, is where people just do less, which again is a hard sell sometimes. But taking your foot off the gas for a week or two is just going to allow your body to recover a little bit more, because otherwise you're just endlessly chasing more and more and more. You're not actually giving yourself enough time to rest, recover, and then benefit from all that work you've been doing. Because a lot of the time in that week is where you get most of the adaptation.
If stress is the investment, rest is the return on investment.
Bosh.
And no, dude, I think, again, you're listening to this, I think it's so important to understand. And I think one of the biggest challenges that runners have is understanding where strength comes from as a runner, right? Like, actually, the best way, like the biggest breakdown that happens in your body after 10 kilometers is from your ligaments, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's when the body starts to break down. So the more strength that you have, the more that you're able to keep your body in a good position, in a good shape, the less likely you are to get injured, right?
Yeah.
That's why strength is important. Strength is there to help you maintain a good position while running, because after 10 kilometers, you start to lose that position. You start to lose that shape. And FYI, most people are starting from a negative space when it comes to position and shape in the first place, because we all tend to live like this. We're broken at the hips. We don't hold our midline well. So strength is there to ensure you can hold a good shape, because the better your shape, the less impact there is in your body. So that's kind of understanding strength piece number one. And that strength comes from basic body weight work. Doesn't have to be with weights, whatever it may be. And that strength doesn't necessarily come from putting more miles in.
No.
And that's the thing that people have to understand. Your ability to hold a good shape and a good position. Don't get me wrong, there are benefits of running, obviously, to help you run. But actually, to be able to maintain a good shape and a good position to ensure less impact on your body comes from getting stronger.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the second element to understanding where strength comes from is not in the gym. It's not on the runs. That is where you make you force and you stimulate the change within your muscles and your body. The actual the regeneration of your body, the adaptation and the strength comes over the following days that you recover. It's when you've moved away from the stress of training, tearing the muscles, stressing the system, and when the body starts to get a chance to be in a more rested state, so it pushes back on that stress and is more kind of what we call parasympathetic, and when your internal chemistry and biology and makeup starts to change, that's when your body goes stronger. And we understand this, right? What's the optimal version of that is sleep. That's why sleep is so important, because that's where the biggest amount of regeneration occurs. But what happens is that people start to train for like they already have busy lives where they've got no time. They're already living in a first gear, and then they add this load and stress of training and into their life. And it's like they have to ram it in and find space where they can. And then what's the first thing that goes is any more recovery time that they have.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think like for us to like, I think it's really interesting defining that word strength and understanding where strength comes from as a runner. Here's a question, bro.
Go on.
So I've actually got a bones to pick. By the way, if you're listening and if you've got questions, if you're watching this live and you've got questions, please do throw us questions as we go, and we'll get to them at the end. Dude, here's a question for you. Injury prevention, right? Like I'm as always, looking at language and looking at words.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think we can prevent injury, or do we have to accept injury as part and parcel of learning to run?
I think you can prevent injury to an extent, but there's always, you're always going to have an element of, there's always an element of risk, isn't there? In anything you do. And sometimes there will just be, like last year, I tore the ligaments in my ankle, and just going around, on the road, going around a corner, I was having a nice, easy run. And I can't remember exactly what I was doing. I don't think I was paying attention to the road, but I just went over on my ankle. And because I was turning the corner, all my weight, which was significant. So, you can do everything, and there's always a risk of injury. But it is trying to minimize that risk. And then also it is being able to adapt if you do have an injury, and then put protocols in place which are going to best allow you to recover and come out of that injury in a better, safer way.
Yeah, I think it's as always, I like to try and go against the grain a little bit, and I'm like, just like to throw the cat amongst the pigeons. But it's really interesting because when I'm talking about injury prevention at the moment, I'm putting together a video series on this and talking about it. But it's like, actually, I don't think there is any such thing as injury. I don't think you can prevent injury as a runner. I think injury will come. Right? Maybe. It's going to happen. Every runner is going to get injured at some point. Even Olympians and first-tier athletes that have coaching teams, physios, specialists, they get injured.
Yeah.
When the way that your body gets stronger, right, is through rest and recovery. And that's because you've got to challenge the system. You have to find this point where you are pushing, right? You are lifting that little bit heavier weight. You're going that little bit faster. You're going that little bit further. And that is like, it's like, how do you actually know what your window of tolerance is and your threshold? You have to learn that, and it's an experiment.
Yeah.
And there is no rule book to it, and there is no guidebook to it. And I think most people, and definitely the people that we talk to who haven't run in their 20s, or have just started picking up a pair of running shoes, have never really done sports at school too much, or they've sat behind a desk for so long, like as I was for so many years, so disconnected from my body. There was no way that I was going to understand where this optimal state of performance was.
No.
Do you know what I mean? Like it was it was just going to be impossible. And I think, even if I'm working on someone, they're working with me, like FYI, a lot of us coaches are shooting in the dark a lot of the time, right? Like it's like, but we're very risk aware. But there are times when we're like, how am I going to challenge this human being? I might have to stretch them a little bit. Am I stretching them too much or I'm not? Now, with experience, you get better at that. But if you want to get the best out of your athletes, there are times when we're even like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have programmed that last rep, or I shouldn't have done something, or you know what I mean? Like, it's like we can even get into this bit of like, oh, should we, shouldn't we, did we do, blah, 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 blah. But I think it's like, I think for me, when I'm talking to runners now, I'm like, hey, you know what? Injury's part and parcel of the game. Like, just deal with it. It's going to happen. And especially if you're signing up to 26.2 miles, like FYI, you have no right running 26.2 miles. The body has no place going beyond 20 miles. Why do you think the wall occurs at 21, 22? Right? Like, it's like, just, you are choosing to do this great big endurance event. You're choosing to do that when you haven't even run 5K or 10K properly yet. And you've never done a half marathon, but you're going to do half marathon as part of your marathon training plan. Right? So I'm like, you're going to get injured. It's going to happen. The likelihood it is going to happen, because even if I give you all the right protocols and you listen to me, your inside noise and your ego is going to get in the way, and you're probably not going to listen to your body one day. You're probably going to think that actually I should probably just push through, or I should. So there's going to be all these things happen, or there might just be the negative space that you can't see, i.e. a dog runs out in front of you.
Yeah.
And you twist your ankle.
No, yeah. I think the injuries will happen, and you can be anyone. You can be best coach in the world, and you're still going to get injured at some point. But I think the difference is, if you have a coach, then they remove the emotion of the injury. And that's where I see people go wrong a lot, is that that you hurt, that actually going out for a run probably isn't the best idea because you have that injury. But because you have this goal that you want to achieve, because you love the feeling of running, and because, you don't like sitting still after you've been running however many times a week. And having a coach to be like, actually, that's not a good idea. Here, do this instead. Or, let's try and work together to get you back in a place where you can do that stuff that you enjoy as fast as possible is worth its weight in gold. Because
go on, bro.
Yeah.
Sorry, go on.
Because injuries happen, but our job then is to be able to help someone navigate through that period, kind of like the best we can.
Dude, and I think this is and that's exactly right. Like, what is the role of a coach? The role of a coach is accountability, and it's to be that rational voice when the irrational inside noise. It's to be a good outside view when the inside noise is taking over of the inside view, right? Like, that's what I think a good coach is there to do, and obviously to offer experience of like, hey, this is what's worked historically. Maybe it'll work for you. So I'm doing a great job for coaches today. So we don't know what it is. So Ollie does, I don't. I'm only playing. So here's the interesting thing. Okay, so that's really great, but I know there's people listening to this, my mum, your mum, who are listening to this, and they're gonna be like, well, that's cool, but I don't have a coach. How can I be the reason of coaching in my own journey? Like, how can I be how can I bring the rationality that a coach would bring, or the voice a coach would bring into my training, into my own journey when I can't afford a coach? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
How
can I bring that safety measure, right? That safety net. What can I do? I've got a thought, but I'm going to,
in terms of what bit would you say? Or just like general?
Just doing too much, right? Like, how can people, like I say, so as a coach, one of the things that we see is like, we as I always say, the most important bit within a coaching session, if someone's walking into your gym or someone's walking into a Zoom room, is I don't care about the 45 minutes of coaching. I care about the first 15 minutes.
Yeah.
And that's the how are you? How do you feel? How's your week been? Oh, you're tired. Why is it? Right? Why is that? And then it's helping people understand what's going on underneath the hood. And that's kind of what we do, because then we can adjust their planning to match what their body is able to do, right?
Yeah.
So how can, and I think that's the magic of what coaches do. It's the coach's eye. It's my athlete is moving a little bit tighter today. They walked in, their eyes aren't as glistening as much. I can tell by the way that they just said, I'm fine, that they're not.
Yeah.
Right? So then you start to pick up all these cues, and these cues let us know if them doing a 20-mile run, by the way, I've never programmed a 20-mile run, but I'm just throwing it out there. If us programming a 20-mile run on Sunday is actually a good idea. Does that make sense? So how can people have this awareness themselves that they might be stepping into injury territory?
So I'd start by having a plan. And just an outline of like what you're going to be doing over the next few weeks. And then I'd begin to look at how those weeks differ in terms of like, you know, distances run and things like that. Because if there's like huge jumps, then that should be a straight away. You know, like I heard a story this week that there's a friend of mine, one of the guys in his office used to run 5K every morning. And used to do that fine. He was like, okay, I want to run a bit further. So he began running 10K every morning. And so over, you know, from 1 week to the next, he's doubled his volume. So rule of 10% is generally fairly well accepted, is that if you are increasing overall volume, it wants to be by 10%. And that percentage should keep you injury free as much as possible. Like you're not going to do yourself a huge amount of damage. Second thing is flexibility, is that actually the plan is a best case scenario. If everything goes right, then that plan is, you know, will be best. Yeah, if everything goes right, you'll be able to complete the plan, but life gets in the way, and being able to have a kind of level of acceptance that everything might not go to plan, in terms of you might have a bad day, in terms of your car might break down on your way home, so you might not be able to get out for your run. So having like fallbacks as well. And I'd always make sure that people have a couple of complete rest days, which then allows them to swap things around. So if it's a Tuesday session, it doesn't have to be done on a Tuesday. You can swap it onto a Thursday if you want. It's just an outline of a plan.
I think there's a couple of really important things here, because I know this is the stuff where people go wrong. So I think there's I think you're absolutely. I think a plan is great. That's what we do. We help people plan. But I think it's really important to understand that it's planning for every eventuality, right? And that's the key thing to a plan. It's not, and not letting the plan take over your life and be a dictator over your success and happiness within training. It is a guide, you know, it is literally a guide. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit more in a second on how to, should I listen to it? Shouldn't I do? Like, we can talk about that in a second. But I think there's a couple of really interesting things that I think people need to think about is, okay, so what happens, Ollie, if I miss my run on Tuesday? Like, let's break it down, right? Like I've programmed that I should go for a 5K run on a Tuesday evening. I'm listening to my body. I'm too tired. It's been a really stressful day. I'm going to miss it. What shouldn't I do? Right? Like, I need to catch up with that run. Like, what's going through the runner's head at that point, right? Like, oh, I've missed a run. I need to catch up. What shouldn't a runner do in that situation when they miss a run, when trying to make up for that run?
It very much depends on the individual, because if they're swapping in a rest day, so if they're like, okay, well, I've got a rest day planned for Wednesday, and Tuesday it says I do 5K, but actually today I'm tired, so I'm not going to do it, then I am happy for someone to catch up on a Wednesday. Because they've just...
When would their next... Let's say they had another run on Thursday. So then should they do a run on a Wednesday? I know we're getting it. This is what we're here to do, right? So then should they do a run on the Wednesday, and should they do a run on a Thursday?
I mean, this is where I'd say it depends on the individual. And actually it might, be that we change the what run is, for example, you're not going to do like 2 interval sessions kind of back to back. Or we might move it around completely. So what we might do is move, say, your strength session on Saturday to the Thursday. So you catch up for your run on Wednesday, and then we swap it. So your Saturday strength session then comes on to the Thursday, and the Thursday run session goes to the Saturday. It depends. Like
okay. So hold on. So I know. I'm being sticky on this because I think this is the challenge that we have, right? Is because everyone wants to know the how. How do I do this? How do I do that? And I think everyone that I talk about this a lot at the moment, which is the internet is full of the whats and the whys, right?
Yeah.
Like everyone, and this is the thing. Like a lot of people now understand why they shouldn't be doing stuff and what the problem is, but it's like, how do I navigate through that? And I stick up for the internet here because I think people, one of the biggest frustrations that I have is people get so many different messages and no one actually really teaches people how to break things down. Mm-hmm. And I think the reason that the internet struggles to break the hows down is because the how is so independent to every human being. We're all at different levels, different capabilities, different knowledge, different, it's so unique. But this is why we have principles, right? Mm-hmm. And this is what I'm interested in is like, can we define some basic principles or rules of thumb that people can think about to help them understand what they should be doing? So it's really, really hard. Like, and I don't have the answer here. Like, I'm just shooting the shit with you, right? Like, I think this is really, so for me, it's like, and this is what I'm starting to think about is how can I get my athletes asking the right questions of themselves when looking at what they should be doing today? Yeah. Right? Like, what can they do? Well, so for me, for example, the Wednesday and Thursday conundrum, right? Like if you've moved a run to another day, but hold on, you had a rest day there for a reason, right? Like it's like, hold on, so now you've got 2 back-to-back runs on Wednesday, Thursday, or 2 back-to-back high-intensity sessions or whatever it may be in the gym. Is that going to be a good thing to do? I think, first of all, you're right. It comes down to your level of strength and experience. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean? Like, if you were already tired in the week to be able to move a run, I would probably say that you shouldn't be doing back-to-backs.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I would say that if in a week you're tired where you've had to move a run already, or you've had to move something, then I'm like, you doing stuff back-to-back is probably not a great idea because something within the stress of your week was already causing you a challenge. Right? If you do a back-to-back in a week, then you know what? The 3rd day needs to be a bloody rest day.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
And you're not just talking about rest day from training. I'm talking about the fact that you need to prioritize sleep, nutrition, because that rest day would be a Friday, and then you're going into the weekend and whatever it may be, long runs and so forth. So I think that's a really important thing to think about. I think the other thing to think about in my mind is if you are a novice to intermediate runner, you should be never be doing, and I give people hard rules because I think once we understand bright lines, we stick to them, right? Mm-hmm. So let's give, if people want bright lines, if people want the how, then I'm going to give you a how. If you're a novice runner, you should not be doing 2 back-to-back high-intensity sessions.
No, agreed.
If this is your first marathon, you should never be doing speed work without guidance from a coach. Pow, there you go.
Agreed again.
Right? Like it's speed is a loaded weapon. Intervals are a loaded weapon. Right? So I think it's really important to think like, okay, cool. Actually, well, if I've missed my run, if I am going to do 2 runs back to back, then what type of runs are they?
Yeah, I agree.
And you can disagree. I know you can disagree, bro. It's just like, this is me shooting the shit, but it's like,
Yeah, and I think depending on what the person is, I mean, because I don't actually think that most people up to where they're getting to that advanced, intermediate / advanced don't need to run more than 3 times a week.
Yeah, amen.
Like, full stop.
And what do you think the makeup of those, and this comes down to, we're going to roll through a load of questions and bits and pieces, but I think this is what it means to run stronger, right? And run healthier. And that's what we're trying to achieve today, is how to run healthier, happier, and stronger. And you already talked about today that it's got to be the quality, and you've just mentioned it again, no more than 3 runs a week. So in your experience, what do you think the makeup of those 3 runs should be for people?
You should have something that's longer, slower.
Yeah.
You should have some, I mean, I'd favour something speed work and something tempo based.
And here's the thing, because I'm just going to, once again, because I don't want to confuse people here. So this is, again, there's a lot of debate on this. I think if you're a newbie and if you it is replacing that speed work with hill work, what do you reckon?
I mean,
why do you disagree?
Because I think there can be some benefit from just being able to differentiate between speeds. I mean, so when I'm talking about speed work and intervals for, say, an intermediate and advanced, and we're beginning to look at how quickly they're actually moving over a set period of time, like a set distance or a set time. Whereas I think for a beginner, we can begin looking at timings and just getting them to used to moving at different intensities. Because as much as it, there's a skill element of doing speed work. So beginning that process when they're kind of a beginner runner will allow them to progress faster further on down the line. And like your speed work as well can be the difference between walking and jogging. So it very much depends. So I would, but it also depends where they live. We probably shouldn't go into that, but yeah, I personally, I'm
here. Like, if people want to, this is so important. Like, I think it's part of what I want to do here is and make sure, like, we have to get in the nitty gritty, right? And it's almost like I want people to see the confusion that we have as coaches trying to figure this out and giving general population advice, because it's it can be so challenging to do. I think you're right. I think, and to clarify where I'm at, like, if you're a beginner, you shouldn't be doing speed work. If it's your first marathon or first half marathon, I believe you shouldn't be doing speed work, because your body is just getting speed work for you is going from walking in life through to just running. Mm-hmm. Right? Like, that is your speed work. That is the load and intensity. Like, you haven't run for years, or you've never run at all, and you've just started running. Your natural running pace is speed work within itself, right? Because your baseline of running is walking of movement. So I think that's where, if it's your first outing, your first 6 months, or your first cycle of training, I'm like, your speed work is the running in itself, right? And you have to start, your speed is understanding the difference between walk and run, walk and run, walk and run, and letting your body get used to moving at a slightly higher pace than walking. Right, so that's kind of what I mean by when I'm looking at intermediates. And the reason I say then intermediates, how can we put different stimuluses into intermediates training programs? Hill work. That's where I start to say that one of those runs in a week is hills are fantastic for any level of runner, but especially beginners. We've got someone who lives in Sheffield. Every runner involves hill work. Someone's just said.
Yeah, that's it.
But it's really important. Like, the thing about hill work is fantastic because hill work almost forces good technique and good position and good shape when running. And it is also bang for your buck, creates like kind of greater strength within your body because you're challenging it. So if you train on hills, run on flats, like, I'm sure people can get the logic of that, right? And actually the likelihood of injuring yourself on hills, like the likelihood of injuring yourself on non-technical trails, is a lot less than it is running on road. Mm-hmm. So I think, like, throwing in a hill work, if you're any level, is vital, but especially with intermediates or beginners, I should say, hill work is a fantastic tool to get your body stronger, make adaptations, and so forth and so forth. But I think you're right. I think as you move up through, then intermediates and advanced, I mean, speed is that's all my athletes do is speed. It's like I do short interval, long intervals, and then I do time trials, and that's it. Mm-hmm. And I never get marathon runners running further than 13.1 miles if they've been on my roster for a while. But I get them to run 13.1 miles. 13.2. Is it 13.1 or 2? My mind's gone blank. As a run coach. Yeah, I know, right? My mind's going. 13.1. But I never get runners running further than that. But I get them to run a half marathon as a time trial. You running a half marathon as quickly as possible, but I mean by quick, and we'll talk about this in a second, but you running a half marathon as quickly as possible as a time trial, it makes greater adaptions than running 18 to 20 miles at a slow party pace.
But what's the limitation that you add in to that half marathon?
85% effort.
which means
you can't run faster than 85% effort. So when I'm talking time trials, there'll also be breathing limitations within that as well.
that's where I was going.
So we'll have to do a whole other, guys, we can't get into everything today, and we're going deep down the rabbit holes here, but, we'll move on to some questions that you guys have. But I think it's like, for me, there is some important, when we're talking about speed work, there is some important factors that people need to think, some principles. One, you never sacrifice technique. You never sacrifice quality for quantity. So your last rep has always got to be your best rep. So if you've got 8 by 200 meters to do, or 8 by 2 minutes to do, or whatever, as soon as you feel your body breaking down, as soon as you're overreaching, overstriding, as soon as you just feel like your shit isn't being kept together, you've done enough.
Yeah.
I think that's rule number one for me. I think rule number two is you never go beyond 85% effort. The only time I ever let runners go to 95% or to 100% max effort is when they're 200 meters off the finish line and it's about to hit a PB and the time's ticking down. I'm like, you know what? If you want to overstretch yourself and push yourself, that's fine. But every other run has to be 85% effort. Mm-hmm. Max effort does not mean max effort. Max effort means 85% effort. Because when you have a 15% buffer in there, it means you're less likely to get injured because you're still in control of your movement patterns. Mm-hmm. And I think the final principle, I think, around speed work for me is always you must, and especially even if you're an intermediate, 48 hours between speed work.
Yeah.
Never 24 hours rest. 48 hours rest between speed work. And I think that's absolutely key. You've got, the harder things get, the more time that your body needs to get stronger from those intervals that you've done, that work that you've put in.
Yeah, speed stuff, similar. I just preach consistency. As in, you can't be, doing one rep where you're doing it at 2 minutes, next one where it's like 3 minutes, and then adding on. It needs to be consistent across the full board. And then I kind of give people a buffer. So I give them kind of a 4 to 6 sets, so that if they have a good day and they're feeling awesome, then you can, and the 4th set feels good, then they can go up to 6. But then also, if they're not feeling good, they can pull back.
But this is it, and this, you've just nailed it, right? If it's feeling good.
Yeah.
And that's what I think runners, and that's the awareness that we say is what's my mental checklist in between each interval?
Yeah.
Right. What was my technique like? How was my shape? How was my position? How was the last 50 meters, 10 meters? And I think this is, differentiating between mental fatigue, wanting to give up, versus my body breaking down. Mm-hmm. And it's like, well, hold on a sec. Was I maintaining shape? Yeah. Was I maintaining cadence? Yes. Did I feel like I was in control of my running? Yes. Okay, cool. I've just said yes to those things. What that means, it's probably just my head was trying to check out.
Yeah.
But if you felt like your position was bad, you was arching, you was broken, if you feel like that was hard, I was pushing too much.
If it was a slog at the end, yeah.
But this is the difference, right, between 85% and 100%. Your 85% slog, you should still be in control of your movement patterns.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be, because as soon as you start to force that overstriding and that powering through, bosh, injury.
You're windmilling to... Right. And the only other thing I'd really add in is just take the rest, because that I mean, this is the big thing, because people just they finish one and in a minute they're just like, right, yeah, let's go again. But you just need to rest, because the first it's the latter reps which are going to be tough. Yeah. And it's those ones where you really need to take all of you need to be taking the rest from the start, because you need to anticipate that it's going to get tougher.
Yeah. And that's again, I couldn't agree. God, we could do a whole other part. I think actually what we're going to do, because what I want to start doing is you and me going to sit down and we're going to screen share, and we're going to actually we'll do some how-tos, like how to build a speed session. Do you know what I mean? Like, and what people should, the timings between reps, like what they should be doing as a warm up. Like, we can actually build it out and go through it with people. Because you're right, recovery between sets is king. Like, recovery works in all aspects. Recovery between runs, recovery between intervals. You know, again, why do people get injured really quickly when doing intervals? They don't give them enough set times between sets. I couldn't agree more, bro. So I'm gonna start. We got loads of stuff to get through. Someone's asked a question live, so let's just quickly ask to answer this, just in case that human has to go. Bosh, look at this. I can bring things up on screen like that. Pow. I can obviously not do it. Right. So someone has asked. Forgive me, someone. It doesn't let me know who that someone is. Oh, hold on. I had to walk up. I've lost it. There we go. Right. I'm on walk and run at the moment. Is there any particular distance, or does that not really matter? I'm aiming for 4 to 5K. So someone has asked that watching live. I'm on a walk-run plan at the moment, I'm guessing. Is there a particular distance, or does that not really matter? I'm aiming for 4 to 5K. Well, the particular distance you've got in your head is 4 to 5K, so there's a distance that matters there. What do you think?
Yeah, I think with a walk run, I'd probably always begin by just training with time.
Yeah.
But it depends if you're looking at 4 to 5K per time out, or whether you're looking to complete a 4 to 5K as like a goal.
Yeah.
Because if it's aiming towards a goal of I want to complete like 4 to 5K walk run, that's kind of my goal, then actually what the distance you're doing in your training, I would say isn't as important. I'd work on building time.
Time on feet, right?
Yeah. But if you're trying to hit 4 to 5K every time you're going out, why that number? Yeah. because if someone wants to work towards the 4 to 5K, then I'd use different training sessions for them to help them build different stuff as they went through. Whereas if they were just going out to do 4 to 5K every time, then I'd say, well, why is that number important?
Yeah, I think that's the question, right? It's like,
and then going out and doing that, and
I think
what is the overall goal?
What's the end? What's the milestone we're trying to hit? Yeah. Dude, I'm all about time and feet. If you're starting out to run, and if you're doing a walk-run strategy, I'm like, do a couple of runs a week, walk-run, time on feet, couple of minutes on, couple of minutes off, like play around with those numbers, plenty of guides online. But to be honest, more importantly, I would be doing long walks. If you're building up, then getting in like a couple of hour walks in the week as well is going to go a long way. And I think doing something like going out and doing like a 3 hour country walk on the weekend, or trying to walk around a park or somewhere hilly or something like that is going to really lend itself to you building the strength to get back off of a walk into more of a run, like whatever it is that you're trying to achieve. So I think thinking about it differently from that perspective as well goes a long way. Yeah,
like I've been reading a book called Law of Running. I don't know. And so basically all the old school running stuff, like 1800s and stuff, was like mainly walking. That's how they to complete marathons. Most of their training was like walking, like 50% of it.
We have no place sending 2 to 3 times our body weight up our legs with every step that we take. That's what people do when they're running. They send 2 to 3 times their body weight up their leg with each step that they take. That is why strength is so important, people. Running is impact. Overall goal is just move. Really helpful. Yes, overall goal is just move. Move, and staying consistent. Like for me, it's like, why are you moving? You're moving to feel better about yourself. Okay, well, what energy do I have to give to movement? That's the most important thing. Find movement that works for the energy that you have to give. Don't overload yourself too quickly. And I think that's the big thing. Like, can you just get in a couple of walk runs in a week? Does that make you feel better? Cool. Stay consistent there. And don't try and climb every week. Stay consistent there for a couple of months. And if you're happy and you're enjoying it and it's time for you, get comfortable within that. You know, and then start, if you want to progress, then progress. But again, give yourself, we have this like, it takes 3 to 4 months to train for a marathon. You know, people want to train for a marathon. I'm like, dude, that takes a few years. So, dude, right, I got some great, so firstly, we've got a load of stuff to run through, but we'll kind of do it quick thing. What does it take to be a happy runner? What are your thoughts?
What a question. A happy runner. In what sense?
To be happy, right? Like, it would say you want to run healthier, happier, and stronger. What do you think it takes to be a happier runner? To enjoy it, right? Like, this is the big thing. Like, people just like, they constantly fight running, right? It's like they love it, they hate it, it hurts them, they enjoy it. Like, it's just this really unhealthy relationship, right? It can be this really unhealthy relationship that you feel like you put a lot of energy into, a lot of time into, and it just lets you down and it hurts you and you hate it, but then you love it again, right? It's just like, it's like an ex-girlfriend that we've all had, right? Partner or an ex-partner we've all had. But it's like, it can be this really weird dynamic in our relationship. Trying to find consistent happiness in our running is a hard thing. What do you think people are missing to stay happy? And I'm not saying you can be happy all the time, because you can't. That's BS. But you get what I'm trying to say generally. Like, to stay a healthier side, a more consistent side of running, a happier side of running. What do you think people need to do?
Approach it as a long-term goal.
Amen.
And because it's a roller coaster. Life and running have got such similarities. Like, you're gonna have shit times, you're gonna have good times, and it is just enjoying that process of becoming better or working towards something, and whether that something is just getting out a couple of times a week, or whether it is working towards a certain goal. And I think as well, like, being able to continually do it, which kind of comes back into that kind of injury prevention side. Is that, you want to be able to get out and regularly do the thing you love, which is running in this case. So being able to consistently do it, and then just accepting that not every day is going to be like an Olympic day.
Amen. Couldn't agree more. I think we've already talked about what it takes to be a stronger runner. Do more squats. What's the number one change? What do you think? And as we're leading in stuff, what's the number one change that you think runners can make to be healthier, happier, stronger, to improve their running? What's the lowest hanging fruit? What's the number one change that they can make?
Get stronger. Do some strength work. I mean, yeah, you're asking.
Getting the hint, people. Are you getting the hint?
And there's a couple of different reasons for this. Healthier, because I think there are no downsides to getting stronger. Happier, because actually you're differentiating your training, which means you then begin to appreciate your runs a little bit better because you're doing other stuff as well. Was it happier health? Yeah. Stronger. Well, get stronger.
Right.
And also it allows you to continually run.
Amen, brother.
I think being stronger.
Keep doing this thing that you love to do in the first place, that makes you feel happy about yourself.
Yeah. Strength train.
Okay, right. So we had questions online.
Go.
Firstly, someone called Beth and Taylor Swain wanted to know if the Tash is here to stay.
Until lockdown is lifted, the Tash is staying in the game.
All right. Thank you very much, Bethan, for that fantastic question. Right. So question number one, which we've covered quite a bit. We actually had two questions on this, bro. So we had breathing when running from Heather. So we had breathing when running. My breathing is so messed up. Nasal breathing scares me. And then we had Frankie takes photos. I love that name. I don't know why. Breathing when running advice. I'm relatively fit, but struggle to get breathing sorted. So I think we've got two things for us to unpick then. someone's breathing is really messed up and their breathing scares them. How can we stop their breathing being messed up, and how can we stop it scaring them, Ollie? We've got 3 things I need to get there. What do you think?
So I think you've got to just become aware of how you breathe in general life to begin. And because if you're going into running and kind of, your breathing's a bit all over the place, then actually starting further back, so nasal breathing when you're walking, becoming aware of how you're breathing throughout the day. Do you mouth breathe a lot, or do you nasal breathe sometimes, or when and where, and trying to draw a little bit of correlation from that? Because sometimes even just going into running at kind of like a slower pace, nasal can be difficult for some people. So if you just begin by working on your nasal breathing when you're walking, when you're sitting, when you're doing stuff like that, when you're working at your desk, even just having that awareness can really help just get a better connection with yourself and with your breath. And then it's kind of just understanding that it's a tool to use. I mean, I don't know. I don't really, in terms of it's scaring you, I'm not too sure about that, to be honest. What do you think?
So I think first of all, let's understand something from a breath perspective. Your respiratory system is dialed up into part of the brain that's responsible for emotions. When we have panic attacks, we feel fear. Our respiratory rate changes first before we feel fear or panic, right? So your physiology precedes the psychology, okay? So what we start to understand is our system has this pattern that it recognizes. When I'm short of breath, when my chest is tight, when I'm struggling to breathe, I feel fear and panic, right? And maybe with someone in life, and I'm not saying, forgive me, whoever asked this question, maybe I'm assuming too much here, but maybe that there is a lot of stress and a lot of anxiety within your world, right? So your body's understanding of being short of breath is related to feeling stressed, feeling anxious, right? You already have this connection between the two. So when you are forcing that relationship in training, it's drawing on those emotions, right? Because your body just understands physiology. It doesn't understand the context. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's not what it does understand, but it's just, all it is doing is looking at, okay, hold on, I recognize this breathing pattern. I recognize the emotion attached to this because this is what we've practiced in everyday life all the time. Now you're starting to mess with your breathing while running, and my emotions now are attached to that breathing pattern. So I'm going to give you fear, and I'm going to do that, right? And this is a very common thing. So I think it's really important that you understand that this is a common thing. Like, so when people are doing Wim Hof superventilation work, some people, it feels good, they enjoy it. But for a lot of people, they have panic attacks, right? Like, they're just basically upregulating the system, causing them to be more fight, flight, or freeze. So they feel fear, and they feel an emotion, they feel panic. Some of the world talks about box breathing. So box breathing is inhale, breath hold, exhale, breath hold. So some people in the inhale breath hold feel panic. Some people in the exhale breath hold feel panic, right? Like, we all have these different relationships with different breathing patterns. There is not a one size fits all. So I think first of all, if you feel panicky when trying this, that's okay. Your body is just doing what it's practiced and it's understood for a long time. But here's a really great thing. You can learn new ways of understanding these patterns. You can realize that, hold on a sec, why is my non-conscious trying to protect me? Why is my body trying to spike more fight or flight? Why is it causing me to have these emotions? Like, I'm safe. I'm okay. So it's learning to be present with that fear without letting that fear affect you. Right? And it's realizing that, okay, I'm here, I'm feeling fearful, but a mass murderer didn't run into the room. There's not a clown in the room. There's not a spider in the room. There's not, my boss isn't in the room. Like, I'm just out running and I'm okay. So listen up, body. Like, listen up, non-conscious. I need you to disassociate these things. Right? And you just bringing some conscious control into that conversation, because in between stimulus and response lays choice. And by you making different choices about how you're going to respond, and that takes time and practice, you'll start to be able to remove that emotion. Oh, actually, hold on a sec. Here's a really cool thing. So if you learn to practice that in running, then imagine being able to utilize that new tool next time you feel fear or panic in real life. It works both ways. So I think that it's, first of all, acknowledging that it's okay, and then 2, creating a practice of stepping over those feelings and emotions, being comfortable with them in the room, accepting that they're there, accepting that your body's just trying to do what it needs to do, and then just saying, hey, I'm going to start learning to put this aside because I'm safe and I'm okay and I don't need these emotions right now. And I think so, first of all, there's that. Second of all, stop trying to push your body so hard. Give it time to adapt. Slow down, right? Like if that means walking and learning to walk at a fast rate while breathing through your nose, then hey, yeah, you've got to learn to run a mile before you can run a half marathon. One step at a time. So I think, mate, you might be pushing too much load on yourself. You're trying to match your breath to your pace. Match your pace to your breath. I think understanding that dynamic. So slowing down. And, you know, Ollie, you just nailed it, which is think about your breath for the 23 hours in the day, not the hour that you're running. If you can be more aware of how you're nasally breathing throughout the day and start to integrate that practice into your everyday, walking up and down stairs, doing the house cleaning, doing some stretching, like keeping your mouth closed and teaching your body that relationship between mouth closed and like your body will start to understand more about what you're trying to learn and achieve, and then it will be able to take that practice and that learning into your running. We down with that?
Smashed it.
Fucking what a team! What a team! So we had that, and then so we got the nasal breathing scares me. So there we go. We talked about that breathing, running. I'm ready to be fit, but breathing gets sorted. So Frankie, same bit of advice. Frankie takes photos. Match your breath to your pace, not your pace to your breathing. Think about the 23 hours in the day. Hopefully, there's a few things in there for you guys to think about. So
also with that, like you can be very fit, but breathing's something different. So that's also a skill that takes time to master. So just kind of show yourself some compassion, because it's another skill you'll need to master.
This is the thing, right? And it depends what you might do. You might just be really good in operating in kind of more anaerobic territory, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Like, that's it. So like that's where you're used to being operating, like in these higher gears. What you're trying to do is learn how to operate and be more aerobically efficient. But that's something that you haven't practiced. So your aerobic fitness is not where it needs to be. But the great thing about fitness is you can learn and adapt and grow and get fitter. So absolutely great point, bro. Right, next up is from someone's name I can't read. Catherine's Running Travels. Can you explain correct running technique? Think mine is super strange. Ollie, go.
Ooh. I think I'm passing this back to you. Because you're much better on tech stuff than I am.
I've just figured out how to do something. Hold on, here we go. Right, I can picture you in there. Whoa, bosh! Now we can have the questions up. We can picture. Can you explain correct running technique? Okay, so first of all, I don't want you to think there's a gold standard of running technique. We all move differently, but there are some guiding principles that you can think about. And it comes back to what we were talking about earlier on in this episode. One of the key things to think about is shape, right? Like position and shape is king. And one of the things you really want to think about as a runner is your ears, shoulders, and hips nicely aligned. What we don't want as runners is this broken hip, right? This broken midline, as it were, because ultimately running is about building a healthy relationship with gravity, right? And gravity is the thing that kind of pulls us forward as runners. And the thing we've got to think about with gravity is our center of mass. It's like our hips, and we've got to think about moving our hips forward so we kind of have this falling relationship with gravity. Now, if we're broken in the midline and our butt's going backwards, where is our center of mass going? Backwards. So we're almost fighting gravity. Making sense, Ollie? You with me? Are we on this? Are we on this? It's been a while since I've explained this. So, ultimately as runners, we don't want to fight gravity. We want to utilize gravity. So if our butt is going the wrong way, then we're just fighting this great force that we could be using to help us propel ourselves forward. So one of the greatest ways that we can do that is think about our ears, shoulders and hips nicely aligned. We don't want arching going on here because as soon as we break, again, we start to send the butt backwards. So just keeping that nice midline, that core just slightly engaged, ears, shoulders and hips nicely aligned, shoulders pinned back, and it's just trying to keep that shape. Imagine there is a balloon, a helium balloon wrapped around your neck and it's just pulling you straight up, you know? But it's not overarching or overemphasizing that position or shape. And as soon as that shape starts to break down, you've gone beyond what you can handle. And that's the great thing about strength work is the more strength that you can do, the better you can hold that position and you can hold that shape for a longer period of time. Ears, shoulders, and hips nicely aligned. Think light on your feet. And I would say a final cue, so that's two, so ears, shoulders, and hips nicely aligned. Think nice and light on your feet. The final cue is your head. So a lot of people end up doing this. So a nice thing that you can do, take your finger, your thumb and your little finger, put it on your collarbone like this, put your little finger up, and that's your head shape, your head position there. 3 little check-ins that you can do with yourself. Easy, job done. Definitely going to do more videos on this down the line at some point. We'll go to the park and hang out. And breathe through your nose, because when you breathe through your nose, you start to engage your diaphragm. When you start to engage your diaphragm, you start to connect everything together. Okay, Bernie Harding, the wonderful Bernie said, how do you deal with a failed run?
Good question. What do you define as failed?
So I think what happens if you go, let's put something, what happens if you go out for a run and you just quit halfway through the run, or you just don't go out for a run in the first, I think a failed run, let's put words in Bernie's mouth. What happens if you go for a run and then halfway through the run you just give up?
Well, I think understanding that there's a reason behind it.
Yeah.
And like just accepting it. Because you don't go out and just give up for no reason. There'll be a reason, whether that's physically, psychologically, you know. I suppose it's kind of that bigger picture thinking in a way, is that actually running's a long-term game and you're going to have those runs. Like they will happen at some point.
Right, we're back. So
We're back.
Whatever sketchy editing I've done to piece this all together for people to review later, apologies. We had an internet disruption. So we were on the question of how do you deal with a failed run? Shall I pick up that one at the end? Did you want to say anything else? Do you ever think about anything else? I've learned how to do split screen now, by the way. This is great.
No, I think I was just saying, just understanding that there's a reason behind it. Whether that is you haven't eaten enough, you haven't drunk enough, you've had a bad day, you're tired from other training, you're tired from life. And just showing yourself like a bit of kindness and a bit of compassion, because not every day has to be PB day, and you will have some days where you just have to kind of think, actually, am I getting the most out of this just pushing through? Yeah. Well, actually, I'd say it isn't a failed run if you choose to just stop or to go home, or, you know, I've always been a big believer that actually if you get through a warm-up and you're just not feeling it at all, then it's fine just to leave it and go, because there will be a reason behind it. And actually, sometimes it's better to listen to your body than it is just to push through for the sake of ticking another session. I suppose it goes back to that idea of quality, right?
But it's not failed, is it? Like, and that it's just how you're framing the decision to not move forward. Like, for me, it's success. Because if you're listening to your body and it's your body saying like today is not the day, then that is you being a very wise athlete and saying I'm just going to listen to what my body is telling me right now. But we perceive that narrative as failure. And I think that's the thing that it's trying to get people to understand. It's like no, that's just you being really in tune with what you need right now. And what you need right now is to probably just go for a walk, or just do a bit of stretching, or to watch Netflix, or to have a tub of ice cream. Like, it's cool. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's like it's about being aware of what you actually need. So love that. Okay. So hold on. I've forgotten how to picture you already. There we go. Bosh. Okay. So this is from Camilla. Forgive me, Camilla or Karma. I haven't got your name saved on here. I know it starts with a K. So this is a long one. Send me an email on this one. So I've got a question for you that many newbie runners can probably relate to. I have been running on and off because of injuries for about a year.
Yeah.
I am the type of person whose mind is much stronger than the body, and advice such as no pain, no gain can be really destructive for me.
Yeah.
Therefore, I struggle with easy runs. I don't know how to pace them. It's easy for people who've been running for years because they just drop the pace and able to run with a heart rate of 150. Whenever I run as slow as I can, my heart rate is still between 170 and 180. This is going to be fun to answer this. I run the whole half marathon with a heart rate of 180. Needless to say, I used to get injured all the time as recovery runs are non-existing for me. How do I go about easy runs when you are still newish? So how should I go about so I think the ultimate question here is, how does Camilla Karma, forgive me, go about instilling easier runs into her training? You with me?
I'm with you.
This is really interesting. We could do a whole episode on this. Go on, what do you think? I know what I'm thinking. What are you thinking?
Just drop the run and walk. And then instead of going for a recovery run, you're going for like a fast-paced recovery walk, because it's more likely that you're going to be able to, if you're talking about those heart rate zones, for example, you will get that, you'll be able to sit in that heart rate zone, at a walking pace.
Yeah. It's really interesting, isn't it? I think there's
and also, like, if you're going for a walk, even if you're at a fast walk, you won't be able to get to that point where you are, potentially being, potentially in danger of injuring yourself again, especially for a newbie runner as well. I think, walk.
Yeah, I think that, right, let's read between the lines here. So let's get into, we're not therapists, we're not psychologists, but we'll get into your head anyway, because that's what we do. So there's a lot of A-type behavior coming through in this, like your inability to move slowly, to slow down, to measure your pace. It's like, one gear and one gear only. I'm pretty sure that this will run into your everyday life as well. So I'm pretty sure that the way you run is not too different from the way that you move through life. I'm guessing here, I'm assuming here, based on a baseline of working with a lot of individuals historically. You can tell me to shut up in comments later on. But that's what I read into, right? When I see people who are struggling to slow down on the road in their miles, that is just a real reflection of how they move through life, right? So I think for me, if you want to learn how to drop your pace and slow down in running, you've got to learn how to drop your pace and slow down in the other 23 hours of the day, because the thing that you do the most is the thing you get stronger with, the thing that you practice the most. So first of all, you need to build this relationship with learning to slow the mind and body down. That can be quite hard, because I'm pretty sure that you probably run with headphones in all the time. You move from meeting to meeting. You like distraction noise is on in the background. It can be very hard to slow the system down. So I think absolutely, I think Ollie's nailed it in the sense that actually just taking for some of your runs, taking the run out of it and just going for a walk. But here's the second challenge: going for a walk without headphones in. Right? Going for a walk without distraction, and learning just to kind of bring your mind and body into the same space and operating in the same space at the same pace. We'll run with that. So I think there's a few different practices that you can do there. And I think looking how you can spend some time throughout your day just not being in first gear all the time. So learning just to sit in a chair and read a book or look out a window or not have any music on in the background, like learning to just generally slow down will that behavior will lend itself into your running over the long term, right? This is a medium game. So I think that's some McDonald's, like, you know, get in your head advice and some thoughts on how you could approach things differently. The other thing that I would look at is drop your heart rate out of it. You can't, like, you want to know how to talk to your body, but you're outsourcing that conversation to something on your wrist. Right? Like,
I know, I agree. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Think about this, right? I want to know what's going on here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look here, and that's going to tell me what's going on here. That seems a bit weird, right? Why don't you just learn? And FYI, these can be really off, right? As soon as that battery starts to go and that light sensor starts to, like, they're not great anyway. Even when the battery's working, like, the accuracy is not great. So learning to read what training zone you're in by how you're breathing is a fantastic tool. So if you learn to develop nasal only mechanics, your heart won't have to do so much work when running hard. So your heart rate will come down, right? And so I think starting to learn how to run nasal only and bringing that mechanics in, starting to realize when you're going from nose to nose mouth, that means you're moving up through different energy systems, and learning to read that and being able to go from nose breathing into nasal mouth breathing, like these two different gears. And I think that could potentially be a good way of you feeling what's going on. So your recovery runs are only allowed to be nasal only. Your slower pace is only allowed to be nasal only. But when you want to push it, you go nose mouth. But then at the end of your runs, your recovery has to be going back to nasal only again. If you're going to shift into like first gear, second gear, you need to come back into fifth gear again. You can't just go in it and not go back out again. So I think playing around with that is another thought. What do you think? Anything else, Ollie?
Yeah, so I mean, I'd just to build on what you said, I'd say, and if you're really struggling with nasal only mechanics, then starting at nasal with your walking and with that recovery walk is going to be a really great way of then transitioning that into your run. And then, just again, reinforcing that, always working back down to nasal. So any exercise that you're completing, because again, I can imagine probably sets down straight out the door, changing rooms. It's just allowing yourself 2 minutes to work back down to nasal, or a couple of minutes to work back down to nasal before you then move on, closing the cycle.
Whenever I run, it's just good though, right? Whenever I run as slow as I can, my heart rate is still between 170 and 180. Close your mouth, your heart rate will come down. You know, and this is the thing, you've got to think about when your mouth is open, you're more anaerobic. When your mouth is closed, you're more aerobic. Right? So it's like, and understanding that. So yeah, dude, I hope there's a few things. I'm pretty sure there is definitely a few things in there you can take away. Strong work. Right, let's get rid of that.
I have 2 questions to add on at the end, by the way.
You have 2 questions to add on to the. Oh, well, you got to ask. But go. What questions you got? I forgot you asked it. Go on, go.
So number 1 was, what's your opinion on resistance bands to build strength rather than weights which build muscle? Do you want to go, or do you want me to go?
Yeah, I mean, I'll go for shits and giggles. Resistance band can build anything, you know, body weight can build muscle as long as you just do enough. Right? It's like, you know, it's as simple as that. It isn't, it's time under tension. That's what builds muscle. You know, it's not it's time under tension. And forcing your bodies to your muscles to that place where they go. So you can get stronger. You can build muscles through resistance bands. You know, you just either got to do a lot of reps or the resistance got to be quite high.
Yeah.
So I think they are fantastic tools because if they come in at a good price, you can store them away easily. You can take them to a park. You can do a full body workout with a couple of bands, which are really great. and you can carry them to the park. Like, don't get me wrong, kettlebells are the greatest bit of kit you can get in a house. But if you want to be able to take stuff outdoors, and if you haven't got space, and if you want to go to a park, then I think resistant bands are absolutely fantastic. And I think that it's if you're a newbie, resistance bands, you can still injure yourself with resistance bands, but you're less likely to injure yourself than if you're dicking about with weights and you don't know what you're doing. So I think they're fantastic tools, and you can definitely get stronger. You just got to add the right load, which is volume, reps, time. I've forgotten all my lingo, but you know what we're saying. What do you think, Ollie?
I think we just need to start by understanding that strength and muscle gain are two completely different things. And although there is some crossover in the middle, that actually they are very different. And that, you know, so if I'm working with a client, I'd always start them with body weight to build strength, and then advance them up to add load over time as they are competent. Okay, so that might mean kettlebells, dumbbells, and then further on down the line, we might use, say, a barbell to build certain movements. Resistance bands is kind of in that midway between body weight and kettlebells and dumbbells. So yeah, you can build strength, but the idea of getting stronger is that you progressively overload the muscles, which means eventually you'll have to move on from them, because unless you're doing like thousands of reps, you're not going to get the adaptation that you see. And this is a big thing with 5 hours later. This is a big thing with like runners, is that they're quite anti using weights because they think they're going to get big and bulky. Now, I've dealt with a guy who's kind of completed multiple endurance races. He's done a couple of multi-dayers, things like that, and does very, very well in them. And he has been kind of back squatting double his body weight for ages, and he's got no bigger. Like, he's literally 65 kilos when he's the same weight he started when he was training with me to the weight he is now. Like, that hasn't changed, and his performance has improved because he's got stronger. Like, strength has a correlation to muscle, but not a direct one. Okay, so they are different. So if we are looking at strength at endurance athletes, we don't want to build muscle, we want to build strength, and we can build strength without building muscle.
Pow.
Bosh.
God, I need to.
Okay.
Had these chats.
Second question.
Go on.
Was how to warm down after running. I'd be interested in what you think on this.
Don't stretch. It's bullshit. What a waste of time. So I never really got my athletes stretching. You know, if they needed stretching, I would usually send them off to a physio. Physios would do assessments and give them actual stuff that would just like more bang for their buck. Like, that would be my thing on stretching. I give them basic like hip flexors, quads, and calves, and if I felt there were bits and pieces where they need it. But to be honest, most people don't stretch. They're not going to find the time to stretch. They're not invested in stretching. So I couldn't be bothered to try and sell the reasons that they should. And also the benefits of stretching are here and there. My take is this: I want to get the most bang for your buck in the time that you have. That's the most important thing for me. And that's the thing. What time have you got in the week to train? Like, that's the first thing that I look at with anyone that I'm training, because it's easy for me to say, right, you're going to do 4 runs and you're going to do 2 strength sessions. You're going to do a full mobility session. You're going to like, hold on a sec. I don't have time to piss at the moment, let alone time to do all of this. So let's look at the time that you've got. Now, people are usually very time sensitive. So what I try and do is get the most bang for your buck in the 60 to 90 minutes that you can give training 3 times a week, right? Like, I'm like, find me 3 hours in the week. If you can find me 3 hours in the week, I can get you to a marathon. True story. Maybe 4, because I need a little bit longer on the weekend, right? But I can get you to a marathon in 3 to 4 hours in a week. Done it before, do it again, no drama. So this guy. I'm like, been an hour and a half now. There's no, I'm just like, let's just get into it. Like, look, you don't need all the time. 3 to 4 hours. I'll get you running a marathon, and you'll cross the finish line, and you'll enjoy it, and you'll want to go out for a run the next day as well. You're welcome. So let's look, bang for the buck, right? Bang for the buck. So for me, you do a efficient warm-up, you go out for your run, you are going to give yourself roughly 10 to 15 minutes. If I'm lucky, you're going to find 10 minutes. I'm going to be able to convince you to do 10 minutes of cool down, right? So what am I looking at within the cool down? Well, firstly, your cool down starts within your run. So what I'll be looking at is the last segment of your running will be about bringing your system down. So that will be, depending on what type of run you've done, it will definitely be nasal only, because when we're nasal only, we're more efficient with energy. We're pushing more towards parasympathetic rest and recovery. So we're basically moving away from that stress response. And that could be the running and breathing protocol. So you're only allowed to run nasal only. It's got to be a long nasal only. It can't be a short nasal only. It's got to be a nice, calm nasal only. But more importantly, I probably just get people to walk for the last 5 minutes or so, right? Like, come on down. Like, bring the system down. Slow it on down. Do a breath piece within that. The next thing that I'll start to then looking to do is basically, my assumption is that your joints are tight, right? Like, you've been in this fixed position for the last half an hour, 45 minutes to an hour. Like, you've just been in this one position, right? Your legs have just been doing this, right? And hey, FYI, you probably just spend most of your life in one position, right? Either sitting at your desk or whatever it may be. So what I'm trying to do within those the 10 to 15 minutes of cool down is trying to get you to move in as many planes as possible, in as many ways as possible, to start aiding recovery, to get blood flow to where it needs to get to, but also just to get the joints moving and opening up and moving in different directions. So my cool downs were very simple. You would do a round of squats, you would do a round of lunges, you would do some push-ups, and you might do some variations of planks. Because here's the thing, I'm getting you to go down onto the ground, I'm getting you to stand up, I'm getting you to squats, I'm getting you to do lunges, I'm getting you to open up your joints, open up your system, I'm getting you to think about active recovery, blood is flowing to where it needs to get to. Oh, okay, cool, so I'm getting the joints moving, a bit of mobility. But here's what I'm also doing as well, I'm getting you to do some bloody strength work because you don't do enough of it. So I'm like, if I can tack on 3 to 4 rounds of a basic body weight strength program at the end of the run, at least you've done that 3 times in a week as well. Mm-hmm. That goes so much further than standing there with your fucking, like, stupid, like, foot there. Oh, stretch, like, get lost, boring. Like, and that's the thing for me, like, that's what I used to do. And that's how I used to always think. Like, you know, when I was back in the day and I was in the gym, we were in the gym, people would run a marathon and I'd have them the next day in the gym with me doing squats with a barbell. Because we would be working on that recovery again and we would get in that movement in. So that's it for me. Basic body weight program. And then if they're down the rabbit hole, I will get them to do a 5-minute breath piece. And that 5-minute breath piece is to push their system into much more of a parasympathetic mode, and that's where the recovery starts to occur. And that breath piece could be a simple inhale, exhale through the nose for 5 minutes, or it might be like a 1-1-1 protocol, where it's inhale for 5 seconds, hold for 5 seconds, exhale for 5 seconds, or variations of that. So inhale for 5, hold for 10, exhale for 10, whatever their protocols are and wherever we are. And that basically helps the system shift down, get into a state of recovery and repair, and so they're off to go again. We can do all of that in 15 minutes.
I was going to say, you can't drop your mic, can you?
What do you reckon, Coach Ollie?
Yeah, I agree. I would, again, time sensitive. I always prioritize something like walking, just bring heart rate back down. Not a huge fan of stretching unless people really want to, and then I'll give them a few like longer stretches to hold. But I'm much more. I would always rather focus on mobility and warm up, because I think regardless of what you do at the end of your session, if you feel tight, you're going to feel tight, and we're going to solve that by warming you up and getting you to do mobility either the next session or in like a part of a recovery day.
And I think, the thing is, it's all these protocols, right? Like for me, part of the cool down is what you're doing for the rest of the day.
Yeah.
Like if you're training in the morning and then you're going to go sit at a desk for a day, I will give you protocols to follow throughout the day to make sure you're moving every half an hour or so. I used to have people in the office and you'd have to do 10 squats, 10 lunges every couple of hours. If you've done a hard track session in the morning and then you're going in for the rest of the day, I need to keep that blood flowing. I need to keep that active recovery going. I need to keep you moving. So I'd be looking at stuff like that. Long walk at lunch, walk in their commute in the evening. Like, how can we get that active recovery and how can we keep it going? If I did, I'll say if I did do a stretch, then I would do one stretch and one stretch well. So it would be something like a pigeon hold or something, and it would be 3 minutes per side. We would be really like, that's what I would be getting people to hold that shape and hold that position. There's so many different thoughts on this, different ways of looking at it, but I would be like, I would do one stretch and one stretch well. But to be honest with you, I would rather do those and try and convince people to do those over the following days. So I would like you to wake up in the morning the next day and do 3 minutes of pigeon hold or 3 minutes of another kind of really like all-encompassing stretch, and do 3 minutes per side and do that first. And then that's it. You've done 6 minutes of stretching today, one stretch, and you've done that really well. And I try and get you to do that 3 to 4 times a week.
Yeah.
But other than that,
Cool.
I can't touch my toes. What's the point? Sweet. That was fun.
Well, yeah.
How long? Right.
Yeah.
Hour and 45. Good old chin wag.
Strong,
so,
yeah.
Coach Ollie, thank you very much for that. First
chance.
of all, where can people find you?
At McCarthy Fitness and Wellbeing on Instagram.
Swish.
McCarthy Fitness on Facebook. And then my website is mccarthysf.com.
Fantastic. And are you going to come and do I'm going to do the how-to series. So we're going to sit and we're going to screen share, and we are going to literally go like how to build a cool down, or how to build a warm up, and how to build an interval session, or like how to build a week's training. Are you up for doing that?
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah. I'm going to throw my pen all over the place. All right, brother.
Cool.
Thank you very much. Super, super appreciated. Thank you for everyone who listened. Sorry about the midway dodgy edit of however you're going to get this, but it's all fun and games. Catch you later.
Yeah.
Bye.